Lawyers of Reddit, what is the most shocking case you have worked on? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Probably a veterans benefit case where the government got out of paying benefits by arguing that the vet's hearing loss was caused by gunfire from occasional recreational hunting rather than several years of working daily in close proximity to jet engines during his service. Enraging, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. I was dating a nice woman back in 2016. In our first conversation, I asked her what she did for a living. She was a paralegal for a malpractice firm at the time. I asked her if there were any interesting cases happening. She said, yes, one we are going to lose. I was interested. I asked what happened. She told me, well, we're defending a doctor who made a mistake. One of his patients was suffering from an eye condition that required a unique recovery. After surgery, the patient had to lie face down for the entirety of their day to prevent further eye damage. It had something to do with eye pressure and a gas buildup near the back of the eye. As it turns out, the patient wanted to fly on a plane and would intend to keep their eyes down through the whole flight. The doctor we're defending didn't tell the patient that they couldn't fly during the recovery. The next part definitely sucked. When the patient took off on the plane, everything was okay. During descent, which people with ear problems can attest, the rapid change in pressure fucked up this patient's condition. They went completely blind in both eyes due to the descent of the plane. Predictably, the doctor did lose the case. It was definitely an interesting first conversation to have with someone. I used to work as a legal secretary for a personal injury lawyer. He told me about a case where his client had radiation burns from an X-ray machine. In the avalanche of documents he received from the defendant during discovery, he found an internal memo. The memo described a serious problem with the machines and continued, "This is an issue we can't ignore. Unfortunately, it's not in the budget." When the case went to trial, he told the jury, "Show them they need to put this in the budget next time." The jury complied, handing down one of the largest verdicts California had ever seen. I normally defend construction, defect, and personal injury matters, nothing too crazy. Early in my career, we got a case involving a husband and wife who ran a foster home, and one kid was alleging the husband had molested them. I was assigned to defend only the wife under their homeowner's insurance policy. The allegations against the husband were bad, but the wife had no idea what was going on. Here was this poor woman, who was a former foster child, trying to give back and help other foster children in the system, and now she finds out her husband is a child molester. It was heartbreaking, and we just wanted to get her out of the case. Then, we get more documents and learn this isn't the first child to make allegations. The dad had been doing this shit for years, and she knew it. Maybe she was involved, maybe she just ignored it. Either way, the whole thing turned fucking gross. I instantly wanted nothing to do with it. A few weeks later, my boss, the coolest guy ever, comes in and says he gave the case back to the insurance carrier. Thank God. That was the only case I've ever felt morally opposed to handling. A mother sold the family farm out from under the son who was supposed to inherit it. Someone shot her, non-fatally. There were so many suspects that almost every lawyer in the county was assigned to defend one of them. Forensics eventually narrowed it down to 2 suspects, but each so adamantly pointed at the other as the shooter that it was going to be hard to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt of either one's guilt. They both pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and served 2 years. I was clerking at the time, little kid fight club. Bunch of moms put their kids in a circle and made them fight each other gladiator style. Real dark stuff. Video included 2 10-year-old girls beating the crap out of each other. Bets were taken, but not on all the fights. Some were just for entertainment. No fathers involved. I told this story on r/lawyers a little while ago, but I'll tell it again here. I'm an immigration lawyer. I do mostly VAWAs and asylums, but I handle other stuff on occasion. I had a prospective client come in a few weeks ago. He's interested in pursuing a relatively straightforward application. He tells me that he might have a criminal history that could affect his immigration. It's only one arrest though, he says. It happened in 19XX, and it's not serious. Okay, I say, it happens, nobody's perfect, and a single arrest is generally not a deal breaker. So, as I'm talking with him, I decide to Google his pretty unique name. A news article comes up from his country, in his language. It's dated the same year he said, 19XX. I ask him, what kind of crime did you say it was? Oh, he says, I think it was drug-related. I figured, alright, marijuana arrest or something, nothing we can't overcome. I clicked through the article. The photo in the article sure looks like a lot like the prospective client. Turns out, prospective client's arrest was not for marijuana at all. It was for cocaine. And not a little cocaine. This guy was caught attempting to smuggle XX pallets of cocaine. I must have looked a little bug-eyed because the guy gave me a sort of sheepish look and a shrug. I tell the prospective client, maybe we should start by filing a few FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, to see what comes up, and we'll go from there. He agrees, and that's that. I'll double-check my suspicions against the government record and let the client know what can or cannot be done. Suffice it to say, getting caught smuggling multiple pallets of cocaine is not a small-time arrest, but you never know what is or isn't true, and you should always do your due diligence. I am an attorney, but the case that stuck with me most was one I sat in on during undergrad. I was a criminal justice major and frequently had to go watch trials for class assignments. I was in the military at the time, so I had to cram these hours in randomly. If we had a light day, or if I could take lunch, I would go to the closest courthouse and check what was available. One day I went down to the federal courthouse in Baltimore and checked the list. One criminal case, nothing else going. I head upstairs and quietly walk in. Despite that, clearly everyone checks me out, which is odd. Usually no one pays attention to the gallery. At the first break, a guy comes over and asks me who I am and why I'm there. He's Office of Special Investigations with the Air Force, so I show him my ID and explain I have to watch criminal trials. He gives me a weird look but doesn't push. As I'm sitting there, I slowly realize I should not be here. Air Force couple has a son, gets divorced. She takes son with her to duty station in Japan and remarries a civilian employee there. Dad is deployed and then moves station and keeps bugging her about when he can see the son. At some point, she just stops responding. A few months later, after Dad has filed a report with her command requesting that they make her communicate with him, Dad gets a call from an OSI agent who he knows, asking him for his son's full name and date of birth. Dad gives it to him, and agent says, "Look, I didn't tell you this, but you need to call OSI on her base." Mom had gone to the field, and 8-year-old son had been bugging the stepdad while he was gaming. Stepdad got pissed off and beat the kid with his fist, first thing to hand, a piece of banister from the stair he was working in. Mom came back from the field 2 days later and found the son unconscious, still on the floor. Because stepdad's last home of record was in Maryland, he was tried in federal court in Baltimore. I sat through the ER doc who treated the son, who talked about seeing the internal crush injuries, and the coroner, who talked about how hard you would have to hit an 8-year-old on the front to cause bruising on his back. I also sat through the dad talking about finding out his son was gone. After that day, I always went to the misdemeanor court for my hours. Client paid a multi-million-dollar settlement with a handwritten personal check. He was pissed and refused to do a wire transfer like a normal person. I think the other side had to scramble to find a bank to deposit the check. Banking regulations limit how much money a bank can hold on deposit. You just can't take a check that large to any local bank. The check eventually cleared, so I guess they figured it out. Good times. That case will be on my resume for sure. Back in the day, I investigated and later in my career prosecuted lots of arsons, so I worked a lot of fire cases. One time, the crews roll up on a garage fire. They're met by the home's resident holding a blood-soaked towel to his crotch. The medics get him stable and transported. He later tells us the voice told him to eat a whole box of saltine crackers without drinking any water, and he was like, okay, and did that. Then the voice told him to eat the newspaper, and he was like, check. Then the voice said to cut off his testicles with a can opener, and he was like, yep. Then the voice said, set the van on fire in the garage, and he was like, you got it. He did all those things in that order, and there were the scene photos of the testicles right there on the garage floor. We got him into mental health court, and he did pretty well. I'm not a lawyer, but I worked in a foreclosure, mediation, diversion court as a counselor. Usually it was people with bad luck, unemployment, or addiction that led them there. Heavy stuff, but became run-of-the-mill. One guy I will never fucking forget. He comes in, and at first it looks like a standard unemployment deal. There are programs with mortgage companies to deal with. He was a dock worker, made pretty good money, but hadn't worked for 6 months and was about to lose the house. I asked for his story, and he tells me it all started 20 years ago. His older son was in the army in Korea at a base on deployment, and his younger son was at a high school party in their town. Apparently, he gets into it with another kid over a girl, and the kid grabs a barbecue fork and stabs the son in the neck. His youngest bleeds out before an ambulance arrives. The older son is devastated because he wasn't there to protect his brother. The father and mother end up divorcing over the grief, but older son returns, makes a life, has a couple young kids, and it all seems good. But 6 months prior, he just walks into his garage and shoots himself in the head. Leaves a note that he can't live with not having been there for his baby brother even after all these years. So my client goes into a depressive state, stops working, stops paying bills, just can't deal with the grief and destruction of his family that one event emanated from. What pulled him out of almost killing himself was that the guy who killed the younger son came up for parole. He went and spoke against him getting out and then realized he had to live for his grandkids. I still think about that dude regularly. Grief is so fucking powerful, it pulsates out and destroys if you don't have the right support. Slayer statute. Interpleader case in federal court. Client murdered her husband to collect insurance proceeds. Found out that she promises to pay 2 dudes to bind his hands and feet with duct tape, execute him, and burn him in an alley for $20,000 each to be paid out of the insurance funds. She lost. A labor case in which, in the middle of the hearing, the judge, 60-year-old male, starts to flirt with my client, 23-year-old female, in a direct, straightforward way. It was so shocking. That was one of the only cases I got speechless in at trial. Those hearings are closed here in Brazil, so no jury, no recording, nothing. Not a lawyer, but I work for the DA in my area. Part of my job is digitizing old evidence. Animal abuse is never fun. Baby autopsies for shaken baby cases are pretty gruesome. The worst was definitely the 15-year-old rape victim who was left to rot in a field for 3 to 4 months before they found her. I had to make sure all those crime scene and autopsy photos are scanned, and properly too. Can't have them too blurry or miss one. Close second is the father that beat his teen daughter half to death with an extension cord, who had the family rally around him and pony up the bail immediately after arraignment. They didn't give a shit about the girl. Not a lawyer, but a translator. I once translated this text about a case. Basically, this mother's kid set her house on fire whilst she left the USA to China to cremate her husband, who died of terminal cancer. The kid literally burned everything, all her life savings. Then the daughter went on to tell lies to all her family members in China, saying how the mother is just accusing her. It was rough translating, especially because the mother left to the USA in the 1990s, worked her ass off, only to let her husband suffer years of cancer and her daughter to burn her house down. I'm not a lawyer, but I work closely with a lot of lawyers and see the same stuff they do. There was a case where a lady had been a victim of human trafficking and was kidnapped in her home country and sold into prostitution ring in the US. She escaped, applied for asylum, told the FBI and whatnot everything she knew about her kidnappers and the others who brought her, putting her life in major danger, and was told that's all it would take to get her asylum and permanent residency taken care of. Fuckers still tried to deport her. Don't worry, she won her case, but only because one of the top attorneys in New York, if you know a lot of attorneys in New York City, you've probably heard about this one, took the case on pro bono. It was wild to me how hard ICE fought to get her sent back and how intense the case got. I'm an interpreter, not an attorney, but I had a school case to interpret regarding bullying. The school decided to have a court case decision made in-house. It was 12 kids and their parents on a stage in the cafeteria. The school officials were there and a school advocate who acted as judge. Apparently, the seniors would trap the freshmen in a designated bathroom after lunch and jump them. 4 seniors and 8 freshmen, who were beat up individually. There was supposed to be 9, but 1 was in the hospital. They showed surveillance of how the seniors picked the freshmen to beat up, and there were 2 teachers aware of this. In one of the videos, one of the teachers helped the seniors by pointing out who the freshmen were. This was a hazing technique that was going on in the school for years, but this case was to make an example of those involved. The teachers involved were only mentioned when the bullies admitted receiving assistance in pointing out who to beat up. The teachers never got in trouble. Only 1 bully was expelled, and all the freshmen were suspended. It was unjust and sad. This case went on for only 3 days, and each case lasted 3 to 5 hours after school.